Hello my dear students, welcome back to my new lecture. In today's class, we will be studying about the sequential decay and nuclear fission and fusion. Okay, in today's class, we will complete the nuclear physics. Okay, we will complete this chapter. So let's start with today's class. So we'll start the class with a question which is very important. Now, an unstable nucleus, suppose, is produced at a constant rate and then it decays with a rate constant lambda. So, we will do this with a problem, but this is actually the part of a theory. You have to understand how to do this type of problem. Now, a factory produces a radioactive substance A at a constant rate R. So, there is a factory which is producing a radioactive substance at a constant rate R. Okay, suppose A is the radioactive substance and it is produced at a constant rate R. And then it decays into a stable substance with a rate constant lambda. Right? Now, find the number of nuclei of A and the nuclei of B at any time, assuming that the production of A starts at t equal to 0. That means we have to assume that at t equal to 0, the number of nucleus of A is 0 and the number of nucleus of B is also 0. And at t equal to any time t, the number of nucleus of A is suppose Na and the number of nucleus of B is Nb. Now, we will write dNA by dt, that is the rate of formation of A, is equal to, so A is forming at a rate R, but it is also decaying. So it is forming at a constant rate, but it is decaying at this rate, lambda Na, right? Because rate of decay is directly proportional to the number of active nucleus. Okay, so it is forming at a constant rate R, but it is decaying at a variable rate lambda Na, because Na is changing with time. So now when you solve this, you will write dNA by R minus lambda Na is equal to dt. Now at t equal to 0, we know that it is given that the number of nucleus of A is 0. And at t equal to any time t, the number of nucleus of A will be Na. So when you write this integration, you will say it is equal to 1 minus 1 by lambda ln R minus lambda Na, integrate it from 0 to Na is equal to t. Now when you put the limits, you will get Na is equal to R by lambda into 1 minus e power minus lambda t. I have directly written the answer. You can solve it yourself. So this is the number of nucleus of A as a function of time. Now at any time t, the total number of nucleus has to be equal to RT. Why the total number of nucleus has to be equal to RT? Because initially there was no nucleus and the factory is producing the unstable nucleus at a constant rate R. So at any time t, how much nucleus will be formed? RT. And initially there was no nucleus of B. So the total number of nucleus at any time t has to be equal to RT. So that means Na plus Nb has to be equal to RT. So from this you will get Nb is equal to RT minus Na. But Na is this, right? So you will write Nb is equal to RT minus R by lambda into 1 minus e power minus lambda t. Now what they have asked next is find the number of nucleus of B. We have already found out. Then also find the maximum number of nuclei of A present at any time during its formation and draw the graph. So from here we can clearly see that Na is maximum at t equal to infinity. Na is maximum at t equal to infinity, and the maximum value of Na can be equal to R by lambda. So the factory is producing the radioactive nucleus at a constant rate, but the number of nucleus cannot be more than R by lambda, and this occurs at t equal to infinity. Now if you want to draw the graph between the number of nucleus of A versus time, at t equal to 0 the number of nucleus was 0. At t equal to 0 the number of nucleus was 0, and at t equal to any time t the number of nucleus is R by lambda. R by lambda is the maximum nucleus. Okay. Now, suppose in the same question, at t equal to 0, the number of nucleus of A is not 0, but suppose it is n naught. But suppose it is n naught. That means initially there was already n naught number of nucleus present. So in that case, you will say that from the factory, the nucleus A is formed at a constant rate R and it is decaying at a rate constant lambda. Now t equal to 0, this time you will say that it already had n naught number of nucleus and there is 0 nucleus of B. Now at any time t, again you will say this is Na and this is Nb. Now in this case, what you will say is, again dNA by dt is equal to R, because A is forming at a constant rate and decaying at a variable rate like this. So the same integration you are getting, R minus lambda Na is equal to dt, but this time the limits will be different. At t equal to 0, the number of nucleus of A is not 0 but n naught, and at t equal to t, the number of nucleus we need to find out. Now when you solve this, you will get minus 1 by lambda ln R minus lambda Na divided by R minus lambda n naught. I have directly put the limits, okay, is equal to t, and from this we will write R minus lambda Na is equal to R minus lambda n naught into e power minus lambda t. So from this we are going to get Na is equal to R minus lambda n naught e power minus lambda t whole divided by 1 by lambda. Okay, so this is the number of nucleus of A at any time t. Okay, now if you want to find the value of Nb, then you know that the total number of nucleus at any time will be n naught plus Rt. So n naught plus Rt has to be equal to Na plus Nb. So from this you will get Nb is equal to n naught plus Rt minus Na. If you want to plot the graph of Na versus time, this time what you will get, see, this time the maximum nucleus will be at t equal to infinity, and at t equal to infinity, when you put t equal to infinity, this whole term is 0 and still the maximum nucleus will be R by lambda. Okay, so this time when you draw the graph, it will start from n naught, not 0, because at t equal to 0, the number of nucleus of A is not 0 but n naught, but it will end at R by lambda only. Okay, so this time the graph will be like this. Understood? Now we will discuss sequential decay. Suppose we have a nucleus A which is radioactive and it decays into a nucleus B. But this nucleus formed is also radioactive and it further decays into a new nucleus C. This type of reaction where a radioactive nucleus decays into another radioactive nucleus and then it further decays, this type of reaction is called a sequential reaction. Okay, so we will discuss the theory of sequential decay with this problem. A radioactive substance A having n naught active nuclei at t equal to 0. So you have a radioactive substance A and at t equal to 0 the number is given as n naught. Okay, it decays to another radioactive substance B with a rate constant or the decay constant lambda 1. Then this B further decays into C with a rate constant or the decay constant lambda 2. At t equal to 0, the number of nucleus of B is 0 and the number of nucleus of C is also 0. Then A part of the question is find the number of nuclei of A, B and C after time t. Okay, so the first thing that we will write is A is decaying with rate constant lambda, right? So I'll write first equation, that is dNA by dt is equal to minus lambda 1 into Na, right? Because A is decaying with rate constant lambda 1. It does not matter what is happening with B. A is decaying with the rate constant lambda 1. That means dNA by dt will be equal to minus lambda 1 Na. So we assume that at t equal to any time t, the number of nucleus of A is Na, the number of nucleus of B is Nb, and the number of nucleus of C is Nc. So when you solve this, you will get, so I'll write the integration also, dNa by Na integrate t equal to 0, the number of nucleus is N0, and at t equal to t, the number of nucleus is A, and when you integrate this, you will get Na is equal to N0 e power minus lambda 1 t. Okay, so basically this is the same answer that we get when a nucleus decays from A to B. So finding the number of nucleus of A as a function of time is relatively simple because you get the same answer. But finding the number of nucleus of B is complicated. See, B is forming as well as decaying, right? So I'll write dNb by dt, that is rate of formation of B, is equal to, so now B is forming at a variable rate and it is decaying at a variable rate. In the last case that we have discussed, in that case from the factory, the radioactive nucleus was forming at a constant rate. Here this B nucleus is forming at a variable rate and decaying also at a variable rate. Okay, so that is the difference between last case and this case. So dNb by dt is equal to, now A is decaying, right, with rate constant lambda 1. Now the rate of decay of A, or the rate at which A decays, is equal to the rate at which B forms. So you will say dNb by dt is equal to lambda 1 Na. The same thing I am writing here because this is the rate at which A decays and this is also the rate at which B forms. Okay, but B is further decaying with a rate constant lambda 2, so I'll write minus lambda 2 Nb. Okay, the rate of decay of B will be dependent on the number of nucleus of B, but the rate of formation of B is not dependent on the number of nucleus of B, but it depends on the number of nucleus of A. So here we will write dNb dt is equal to lambda 1 Na minus lambda 2 Nb. So when we solve this, we will get dNb by dt is equal to lambda 1 Na. I'll write Na as N0 e power minus lambda 1 t minus lambda 2 Nb. Now dNb by dt plus lambda 2 Nb is equal to lambda 1 N0 e power minus lambda 1 t. Now you can see this differential equation is of the form which is solved by using integrating factor. I'll not solve it, I'll directly write the answer. You know how to solve the differential equation using integrating factor, right? So I'll write the answer for you. Nb is equal to lambda 1 N0 divided by lambda 2 minus lambda 1 into e power minus lambda 1 t minus e power minus lambda 2 t. Now, what will be Nc? We know that the total number of nucleus is constant. So initially the total number of nucleus was N0 and it is not forming from anywhere. The total number of nucleus is constant and that is N0, and this has to be equal to Na plus Nb plus Nc. Now we have already calculated Na, we have already calculated Nb. So Nc will be nothing but N0 minus Na minus Nb. Now we know the value of N0 because it is given to you. We have calculated the value of Na and we have also calculated the value of Nb. Okay, so from this we will get the value of Nc. Now we have found out Na, Nb and Nc. That was the first part of the question. Now the second part of the question is, what would be the answer of part A if lambda 1 is greater than lambda 2 and lambda 1 is less than lambda 2. So case 1, lambda 1 is greater than lambda 2. If lambda 1 is greater than lambda 2, in that case Nb will be how much? So in that case, see, lambda 1 is much larger than lambda 2. We will assume that lambda 2 is very small and lambda 1 is infinite or very large compared to lambda 2. So from this you will write lambda 1 N0 divided by lambda 2 is very small, right? So I'll write here minus lambda 1 because lambda 2 can be neglected in front of lambda 1 into e power minus, from here, see, because lambda 1 is very large, so I'll write e power minus lambda 1 is nearly equal to 0, and this will be e power minus e power minus lambda 2 t. lambda 1 cancelled, you will get NB is equal to N naught e power minus lambda 2 t. So this is one method of finding the value of NB when you know the general formula. Okay, but there is one more method where you will not have to solve the differential equation, or you will not have to remember the formula above. See, second method, because lambda 1 is greater than lambda 2, that means what? It means B is formed at a very fast rate. B is formed at a very fast rate, but it decays at a very slow rate. But it decays at a very slow rate. Okay. Now, if you look at this reaction, A gives B gives C. Then lambda 1 is very large and lambda 2 is very small. So this is decaying very fast and this is decaying very slowly. So what will you say is at t equal to 0, suppose this was n naught 0, 0, we will assume that lambda 1 is so large, that A instantly decays to B. A instantly decays to B. That means we will assume that A was not even there. We will assume that there is only this radioactive decay. B is decaying up to C, and at t equal to 0, the number of B is n naught. Although it was not 0 at t equal to 0, but because it is decaying so fast, we will assume that the number of nucleus of B at t equal to 0 is n naught. In that case, what will you say? In that case, this becomes a simple radioactive reaction, right? And you will get NB is equal to N naught e power minus lambda 2t. This is precisely what we got in the approximation that we have done on the formula. Okay, and not e power minus lambda 2t. Okay, now case 2. Case 2 is lambda 1 less than lambda 2. So in this case, lambda 1 is very small compared to lambda 2. Again, I write the value of NB in general form. Lambda NB is equal to lambda 1 n naught divided by lambda 2 minus lambda 1 into e power minus lambda 1 t minus e power minus lambda 2 t. Okay, now NB is equal to, after approximation, what we will do? So this time lambda 2 is large, so we will neglect lambda 1 in front of lambda 2. So you will write NB is equal to lambda 1 by lambda 2 n naught into, this time because lambda 2 is large, so we will neglect this and we will assume this to be 0 because e power minus infinity is 0. Okay, so here we will write e power minus lambda 1 t. So this time we will get lambda NB is equal to lambda 1 by lambda 2 n naught e power minus lambda 1 t. Okay, now even if we do not know this formula of NB, or we do not want to solve the differential equation of NB, we can still find out this answer by one shortcut. See, lambda 1 is less than lambda 2 means what? Lambda 1 is less than lambda 2 means A is decaying at a very slow rate, but B is decaying at a very fast rate, right? So we will assume that in this type of situation, we will assume that B is, or number of nucleus of B is constant. Okay, we will assume that number of nucleus of B, that is rate of change of B, becomes 0. So you will write dNB by dt becomes 0. Okay, so that means dNB by dt we know is equal to lambda 1 Na minus lambda 2 NB. But because lambda 2 is very large compared to lambda 1, we will assume that as soon as B is formed, it decays to C. So we will assume that as soon as B is formed, it decays to C. That means B is almost constant. That means the rate of decay of B has to be 0. So lambda 1 Na minus lambda 2 Nb will be equated to 0. In that case, you will say that Nb is equal to lambda 1 by lambda 2 into Na. But we know that Na is n naught e power minus lambda 1 t. So lambda 1 by lambda 2 n naught e power minus lambda 1 t. This is what we got. Now they have asked you one more problem where they have asked you find the time when NB becomes maximum. Find the time when NB becomes maximum. So we have already calculated the value of NB as a function of time, right? So NB is equal to lambda 1 n naught divided by lambda 2 minus lambda 1 into e power minus lambda 1 t minus e power minus lambda 2 t. Now to find the maximum value of time, to find the time when NB becomes maximum, what you will do dNB by dt is equal to 0. And I'm not differentiating it. It's very easy to differentiate this. When you differentiate this and equate to 0, you will get the value of time as ln lambda 1 by lambda 2 divided by lambda 1 minus lambda 2. So at this time, what you will say, at this time, NB becomes maximum. Okay, by approximating the values in the formula, right? So without using this also, we can find out whenever lambda 1 is greater than lambda 2 and whenever lambda 1 is less than lambda 2, we don't have to use the formula or we don't have to solve the differential equation. We can directly get the answer of NB. Okay, Na is very easy to calculate. Once you've got the value of NB, then you can also get the value of NC because the total number of nucleus is constant. Now we will start with nuclear fission. Nuclear fission is the process of splitting of heavy nucleus into mid-level nucleus due to the bombardment of neutron. So whenever neutrons are bombarded into a heavy nucleus, what happens is the neutron gets inside or penetrates the atom, strikes the nucleus and makes it unstable. Now when this nucleus becomes unstable, it becomes radioactive and it splits or it breaks. And this process of splitting of a heavy nucleus into mid-level nucleus is called the nuclear fission. Now in 1932, James Chadwick discovered the neutron. As soon as this was discovered, Ernst Fermi, what he did was he bombarded these neutrons into some elements. What he found was that these neutrons made the elements or nucleus unstable. Why? Because it penetrated inside the atoms and strike the nucleus. When it strikes the nucleus becomes unstable, and a stable nucleus also becomes radioactive. So this same experiment was repeated with uranium salt solution. So what happened was they took a uranium salt solution and they bombarded it with neutrons. So when they bombarded it with neutrons, they found out that the salt solution now contains many different nuclei. The prominent among those nuclei were barium and krypton. So actually many nuclei were formed, but the percentage yield of barium and krypton was more than the others. In fact, this is the graph which shows the fission yield versus the mass number. This shows that most of the mass numbers are having some yield. That means in this solution, many different nuclei were formed. Okay, the most percentage yield was for atomic mass number 95 and 147. Okay, so this graph shows that many different types of nucleus were formed, but the two nucleus that were formed were of unequal masses mostly. See, if this was one of the nucleus, then this was the other nucleus. If this was one of the nucleus, this was the other nucleus. But there is very less yield of a nucleus with atomic mass number 118 because this is the average. Okay, uranium 235 absorbed the neutron, so it became uranium 236. Now uranium 236, so if two nucleus has to be formed, then the average has to be 118, right? So if the average is 118, we are seeing that the two nucleus that are formed are of unequal mass. If they are of equal mass, they will release 118 and 118. But we are seeing that the yield of this 118 is very less. That means the two nucleus that are getting formed are of unequal mass. One is of lower mass and the other is of higher mass. Okay. So a variety of combinations of middleweight nuclei may be formed due to the fission. This experiment has shown that a variety of combination of nucleus is formed. Okay. But mostly two nucleus that are formed, one is of lighter mass and the other is of heavier mass comparatively. Okay. It's a rare chance that both the nucleus will be of similar mass. Now, the most attractive bid from a practical point of view to achieve energy from nuclear fission is to use uranium-236. So the most common uranium that can give you fission products easily is uranium-236. And how is this uranium-236 formed? This is not found naturally. What happens is a slow moving neutron, or you can say thermal neutrons, when it strikes a uranium-235 nucleus, the uranium-235 nucleus absorbs it. Okay, so when the uranium-235 nucleus absorbs this neutron, it becomes uranium-236. And uranium-236 is an unstable uranium and it instantly produces fission. Okay, so now a uranium-235 nucleus has a large probability of absorbing a slow neutron and forming uranium-236 nucleus. And this uranium-236 nucleus gives you the fission products. So till now, we have seen that whenever a slow moving neutron bombards a uranium-235 nucleus, uranium-236 nucleus is formed. And this uranium-236 nucleus is unstable and it produces fission instantly. Okay, now we have seen that the fission yield or the fission products from uranium-236 is not a fixed product. It gives you random products, out of which barium and krypton are the most prominent, but there are many other products, right? So the two nucleus that are formed can be XY from uranium-236, it can be X dash Y dash, it can be X double dash Y double dash, it can be anything. Okay, there are number of reactions that can be written here. Okay, but the most important reaction for us is the reaction where barium and krypton are formed, because that has the maximum yield. Okay, so the nucleus then fission into two parts, that is X and Y, or X dash and Y dash, or X double dash and Y double dash. It can be anything. Now see, when X and Y are formed, two neutrons are released. When X dash Y dash are formed, three neutrons are released. So although one neutron is striking the uranium-235, but it is again producing two more neutrons. In this reaction, it is again producing three new neutrons. In some other reaction, it will produce four new neutrons. Okay, so among all these reactions, it is said that on an average, from one reaction, 2.5 new neutrons are produced in a fission event. Okay, and the mass lost per reaction is 0.2 AMU. So in one fission reaction, on an average, the mass lost is 0.2 AMU. So if mass lost is 0.2 AMU, then the energy released will be 0.2 multiplied by 931.5 mega electron volt. Why? Because 1 AMU into C square is 931.5 mega electron volt, right? So on an average, approximately, you will say that per fission, 200 mega electron volt of energy is released. So in a fission event, about 200 mega electron volt of energy is released. Okay, and this energy mostly appears as the kinetic energy of the fragments and also the neutrons. Okay, in fact, these neutrons take away about 5 mega electron volt of energy each. Okay, so now these are very fast moving neutrons, right? But we require a very slow moving neutron to strike the uranium. Okay, so if we require a slow moving neutron, first we have to slow it down so that it can be used again for a new fission. Okay, to slow down these neutrons, we use moderators. Okay, what are moderators? We will discuss a bit later in details. Now, these fast neutrons can escape from the reaction. So these fast neutrons, if they are very fast, they can escape from the reaction and they miss the chain reaction. So if you want them to be a part of the chain reaction, that means if you want that these neutrons take part in another fission, in that case you need to slow it down. And this slowdown is done with the help of moderators, I've told you. But what are these moderators? We will discuss after we discuss these reactions. Now, uranium-92-235, when it absorbs one neutron, it first converts to uranium-236, 92-236. Then it splits into two nucleus, that is barium and krypton. Now, when it splits into barium and krypton, now the atomic number of barium is 56 and atomic number of krypton is 36. This is fixed, but this mass number can be different in different books, because many isotopes of barium are there. So many isotopes of barium are there. Similarly, many isotopes of krypton are there. So you can say that different isotopes of barium, krypton, or strontium, or whatever is forming can be formed, right? So that is why this value can be different in different books, but the atomic number value has to be same. Krypton has the atomic number of 36. Barium has the atomic number of 56. Okay. Whenever barium and krypton are produced, 3 neutrons are released. Okay. So 1 neutron was required for the bombardment, but after the reaction, 3 new neutrons have been released. And obviously the energy is also released. Now the Q value of this reaction is the mass of reactant minus the mass of product into C square. So the mass of reactant will be the mass of uranium. Okay, we have written the mass of uranium atom, so but you need the mass of uranium nucleus. That is why we have written minus 92 Me here. Okay, so this is mass of uranium atom minus 92 mass of electron. This becomes the mass of uranium nucleus plus the mass of neutron minus mass of barium minus 56 mass of electron. Again, this is mass of barium nucleus. Similarly, mass of krypton atom minus 36 mass of electron, because if it has 36 protons, it will have 36 electrons also. Okay, minus 3 into mass of 1 neutron into C square. So when you solve this, you will get Mu plus Mn minus Ma plus mass of krypton plus 3Mn into C square. Okay, when you put the values of mass of uranium, mass of barium, mass of krypton, mass of neutron, you will get the energy as approximately 200 mega electron volt. Okay, but this is not the only reaction that is taking place. We know that there are so many reactions taking place. Okay, so one such reaction is uranium-92-236 first is formed, and then it converts to antimony 51-133 and niobium 41-99. Again, the atomic number has to be fixed, but the atomic mass number may not be the same in every reaction, because different isotopes of antimony are there, different isotopes of niobium are there. Okay, in this reaction that I have written here, 4 neutrons are released. So it's not necessary that every time 3 neutrons will be released. Okay, and obviously the Q value. Now Q value in this reaction is also approximately equal to 200 mega electron volt. One more reaction that we can write here is, once uranium-236 is formed, it might convert to xenon and strontium. Okay, xenon has an atomic number of 54 and strontium has an atomic number of 38. This mass number again can vary. In this reaction that we have written, 2 neutrons are released. So that is why we say that after so many reactions that are taking place, I have written only 3. There can be hundreds of reactions that are taking place. I have written only 3 here. But on an average, we will say that out of all the reactions that we have seen, 2.5 neutrons are released per fission. So one fission will give you approximately 2.5 neutrons, new neutrons. Okay. Now, xenon series. Xenon series is a very important series where the xenon 140, which is a radioactive substance, it decays by emitting beta minus particle, and it first convert to cesium 140. So you know that in a beta decay, the mass number does not change. Only the charge number or the atomic number increase by 1. Okay. So first the xenon converts to cesium, then it converts to barium, then it converts to lanthanum, and finally it converts to cerium. Okay, which is stable. So xenon to cesium to barium to lanthanum to cerium. Okay, the atomic mass number does not change, but the charge number or the proton number or the atomic number increase by 1 every time. Okay, so this is the xenon series. Xenon finally decays to cerium. Now, what is this chain reaction? When uranium is bombarded by neutrons, each uranium nucleus is broken into 2 fragments, right? And along with it, huge energy is released. Also, on an average, 2.5 fresh neutrons are released. Now, these 2.5 neutrons can take part in the fission, right? Under formal conditions, that means when you make the condition for the neutron to strike or produce fission in uranium-235, again, that means you have to slow down these neutrons, because the neutrons that are released are of very high kinetic energy. Such high kinetic energy will not produce fission, it will escape. So to produce fission or to use these neutrons to produce more fission, what you have to do is you have to slow it down. Okay, so under formable condition, 3 neutrons fission other uranium nuclei in the same way. So we are assuming here that one fission is producing 3 neutrons, but we know that on an average 2.5 neutrons are produced. So what they're saying is, suppose this is the uranium-235 nucleus. Okay, so this is the uranium-235 nucleus, and first a neutron strikes. So this is the neutron and it strikes. Then 3 more neutrons are released. Now these 3 more neutrons can strike 3 more uranium nucleus. And if this fission is occurring, then 3 more neutrons will be produced. Here also 3 more neutrons will be produced in this fission. Here also 3 more neutrons will be produced. And this process will continue. It will exponentially rise. This reaction is called a chain reaction. When once you start the process, now this process continues because neutrons keep on getting released from each reaction. Okay, so 3 neutron fissions other uranium nucleus in the same way. So first from here 3 neutrons was released, then these 3 neutrons produce fission in 3 other nucleus, and from there 3 3 3, that means 9 more neutrons produced. Now these 9 new neutrons will again strike 9 new uranium atoms, and from that 9 into 3, that is 27 new neutrons will be produced, and it will go on exponentially. Okay, so thus a chain of nuclear fission is established, which continues until the whole of uranium is consumed. Now when the whole of uranium is consumed, then this will stop. There are the following main difficulties in establishing a chain reaction. First, the first major difficulty is leaking or escaping of neutrons from the system. You know that these neutrons are very high kinetic energy, so it might escape from the system or it might leak from the system. Okay, the second one is absorption of neutron by unbroken nuclei present in the system. It might be possible that even if the neutron strikes the uranium, it might not convert to uranium-236. You know that it has to first convert to uranium-236 to split. Then absorption of neutrons by uranium-238. So uranium-238 is not a fissionable material because it cannot absorb slow moving neutrons, but yes, it can absorb fast moving neutrons. One important thing about uranium is that uranium 235 is to uranium 238 in a sample is approximately 0.7 to 99.3. This is approximate ratio that I'm writing. That means in any uranium sample that we have, the fraction of the sample which is uranium 235 is very small. So that is why out of 100 gram of the sample, only 0.7 gram of the sample is utilizable. Okay, so this is the naturally occurring uranium sample I'm talking about. So first what you have to do is, if you want to increase the concentration of uranium, you have to make it an enriched uranium. Now making an enriched uranium or uranium-235, enriched uranium means making more fraction of or more percentage of uranium-235. Now it is very difficult to separate isotopes. We have discussed in the first lecture that isotopes have similar physical and chemical properties, right? Isotopes have similar physical and chemical properties. It is very difficult to separate isotopes, right? But we can separate isotopes on the basis of a process called diffusion. This diffusion process relies on the fact that at thermal equilibrium, both isotopes have same energy. But when they have same energy, because of different mass, they have different velocity. So they have different velocities and we separate them according to their velocities. Okay, so this is how we separate isotopes by using the process of diffusion, right? So once we have this enriched uranium, we mostly use this enriched uranium for the fission process, but still it will have uranium-238, right? So absorption neutrons by uranium-238 is a hurdle. Hence, it is not necessary that all neutrons will proceed for the chain reaction, because these are the hurdles. Some might leak, absorption of neutron by unbroken nuclei may not take place. Okay, now also absorption of neutrons by uranium-238, which is not useful for us. Hence, it is difficult to continue the chain reaction. Now, uranium-238 is fissionable but not fissile. What does this mean? To understand this, first we must understand what is the definition of fissionable and fissile. Fissionable means those substances which can undergo fission. So uranium-238 is fissionable. When it is fissionable, it is undergoing fission when neutrons of energy in excess of 1 mega electron volt strikes this uranium-238. Okay, so whenever a neutron which has high kinetic energy and it is striking the uranium-238 nucleus, this uranium-238 nucleus can perform fission. How it performs fission is, first this uranium-238 is transmuted to plutonium-239. Now what is this transmuted? Transmuted means changing the element. So here the element has changed. From uranium it has converted to plutonium. So when a fast moving neutron strikes the uranium-238, it first converts to plutonium. And this plutonium is fissile. That means it can undergo fission also and it is fissile also. Now we must understand what is the meaning of fissile. Fissile means substances which can undergo chain reaction. So if there is a possibility of chain reaction, then that substance will be fissionable as well as fissile. Now uranium-238 is not fissile. That means you cannot sustain the chain reaction in uranium-238. Why? Because uranium-238 requires neutrons which energy excess of 1 mega electron volt. Now this type of energy is not possible to maintain, because after every collision these neutrons keeps on decreasing its kinetic energy, and it is not possible to maintain the high kinetic energy which is required for the fission of uranium-238. So that is why you can perform fission in uranium-238, but you cannot maintain you cannot make it a chain reaction, right? So uranium-238 is fissionable because it can undergo fission using a fast moving neutron, but it is not fissile. Fissile meaning is that if a nucleus is fissile, that means it can undergo chain reaction. Okay, uranium-238 is not fissile, that means it cannot undergo chain reaction. Now, the next important definition that we are going to discuss is critical mass. Now, what is critical mass? It is the minimum mass of uranium or any other system for which the chain reaction is possible. So critical mass is the minimum mass of uranium system or any other system for which the chain reaction is possible. Okay, for uranium-235 system it is 10 kg. So you need a minimum mass of 10 kg of uranium-235. Okay, now we also know that we need one neutron, right? And uranium-235 can undergo fission using a neutron with thermal energy, that is very small energy, right? So the necessary condition for a nuclear fission is there must be at least one neutron. The one neutron must take part in the nuclear fission. After that one neutron is taking part in the nuclear fission, you know that after every reaction more and more neutrons keeps on producing automatically. Okay, so if you have one neutron at the start and it is able to strike the uranium-235, then the nuclear fission process will start. So to start the nuclear fission process, at least one neutron is required. Now, to maintain the chain reaction, we will define one more term, and that is called the multiplication factor or the reproduction factor. So the multiplication factor, which is represented by K, is defined as the number of neutrons present in a step of nuclear fission reaction divided by the number of neutrons which was present in the last step. That means now in this reaction, if number of neutrons is suppose X and in the last step the number of neutrons was Y, then the ratio of this X and Y is the multiplication factor. Now, if this multiplication factor is less than 1, that means the number of neutrons are decreasing. If the number of neutrons are decreasing, that means finally the nuclear fission will stop. So it will be a chain reaction, but it will stop eventually. But if K is greater than equal to 1, then the chain will continue till all the uranium-235 nucleus is exhausted. Okay, so here if K is greater than equal to 1, two things can be said. If K is equal to 1, if K is equal to 1, that means we maintain the number of neutrons in this step and also the last step and also in the next step. So if we maintain the neutrons, in that case, K will be equal to 1, and you will say this is a controlled chain reaction because you are controlling it. How much number of neutrons you require, you are maintaining that much number of neutrons. So controlled chain reaction. So if K is equal to 1, you will say that it is a controlled chain reaction. If K is greater than 1, in that case, in every step, the number of neutrons will increase. And if number of neutrons will increase in every step, in that case, you will say that this is an uncontrolled chain reaction. This is an uncontrolled chain reaction. Because the number of neutrons will keep on increasing, energy release will keep on increasing. Now, the number of neutrons emitted during fission reaction depends upon the volume of the system. So how much neutrons will be emitted during a fission reaction will depend on the volume of the system, that is R cube. So more the volume, more is the number of neutrons emitted. Okay, we know that these neutrons also get leaked. Now more the area of cross section, more will be the rate of leaking. So rate of leaking is directly proportional to R square. More the radius, more is the rate of leaking. Now, types of chain reaction. We have already discussed there can be two types of chain reaction. One is a controlled chain reaction where the value of K is 1, that is value of the reproduction or the multiplication factor is 1. Okay, and the other is the uncontrolled reaction where the number of neutrons keeps on increasing because after every reaction the number of neutrons produced are increasing. Okay, so this is an uncontrolled reaction where K is greater than 1. Okay, first let us discuss what is controlled chain reaction. So in a controlled chain reaction, the rate of reproduction is controlled and it is equal to 1. Energy liberated in this process or in this type of reaction is always less than the explosive energy and it proceeds with a certain velocity. So the reaction is taking place at a certain rate. Okay, and the energy that you're getting is not explosive. You can utilize that energy. That is, it can be utilized for constructing work. It can be utilized for generating power. Okay, the nuclear reactors that we study based on the controlled chain reaction only. Now, what is uncontrolled chain reaction? So in an uncontrolled chain reaction, we have seen that this one neutron finally produces 3 neutrons. So if 1 neutron strikes uranium nucleus, 3 neutrons are produced. Now these 3 neutrons, when these 3 neutrons strike 3 other uranium nucleus, so these 3 neutrons striking 3 other uranium nucleus, you will get 9 more neutrons. So this will lead to an uncontrolled chain reaction. To make it controlled, what you have to do is you have to absorb these neutrons so that with 3 nucleus, with 3 uranium nucleus, you get only 3 neutrons. So for that, what you have to do is you have to use neutron absorbers. Okay, but if you do not use neutron absorbers or if you do not use something which can stop these neutrons from striking the uranium nucleus, in that case the reaction will become uncontrolled. Okay, for uncontrolled reaction the value of K is greater than 1 or the reproduction factor is greater than 1. That means the number of neutrons keeps on increasing, and in this case a huge amount of energy is liberated and we cannot control them. So atom bomb is based on the uncontrolled chain reaction. Okay, now what is a nuclear reactor? Nuclear reactor is a device in which a self-sustaining controlled chain reaction is established to produce energy. So nuclear reactor is a device where you produce energy in a controlled way. Okay, so what you do is in a nuclear reactor, at least 1 neutron liberated in particular step can fission the next nucleus. That means it is occurring in a controlled manner or it is controlled artificially. Okay, what happens here is, so we know that whenever a neutron strikes a uranium, after fission 3 more neutrons or on an average 2.5 more neutrons are generated. But suppose somehow we control them and we say that these 2 neutrons are not striking the uranium nucleus. Only this neutron is striking the uranium nucleus. In that case, you will say that only one neutron is striking the next uranium nucleus, and from here again 3 neutrons are produced, but 2 of them are absorbed, and only one neutron is again striking the next nucleus. In that case, you will say that you have controlled the reaction. So in a nuclear reactor, you artificially control this chain reaction. Okay. Now, what are the components of a modern day reactor? First is fission substance. Obviously, you have the fuel, right? You must have the fuel. So the fuel, the fission substance here is the natural uranium or uranium-235 rich uranium source. Okay. Other fuel source are plutonium and uranium-233. In fact, I'll tell you one thing. Those heavy nucleus which has even number of protons but odd mass number are generally fissionable or fissile, For example, uranium-235, uranium-233, plutonium-239, all these are fissile. But uranium-238 is not fissile. Okay, it can undergo fission using a fast-moving neutron, but it cannot be fissile, right? So we need the fission substance, that is fuel. Okay, so the first thing in a modern day reactor is the fuel or the fission substance, and mostly it is uranium-235, but it can be plutonium-239 and uranium-233. So in India, we mostly use plutonium and thorium in our nuclear reactors. Okay, quantity of fissionable material should be equal to the critical mass. Now we know what is the critical mass. For a uranium sample, it is 10 kg. So the quantity that we have to use is equal to the critical mass. Okay, now the next thing is very important. This is called moderator. Moderator is used to slow down the fast moving neutrons. You know that whenever neutrons come out or neutrons are liberated during a nuclear fission reaction, these neutrons have high kinetic energy, that is approximately 5 mega electron volt. You need a slow moving neutron, not a fast moving neutron, right? So for that, what you have to do is you have to use moderators. Moderators are something with which these neutrons collide and it decreases its speed. Okay, so moderators are used to slow down the fast moving neutrons, and it changes the speed to a thermionic speed. Okay, that means it changes it to a thermal neutron. The most commonly used moderator is heavy water. Sometimes graphite or beryllium oxide is also used for this purpose, but the most common is the heavy water. Then there is a neutron source. Obviously, you need a neutron source to start the chain reaction. Initially, you need the first neutron. So for that, there has to be some source, right? So you need a neutron source. Then there is a controller. Cadmium rods are used to control the rate of fission in the reactor. Cadmium is a very good absorber of neutrons. You know that you have to absorb neutrons, right? So neutrons are absorbed by neutron absorbers, and mostly cadmium is for this purpose. Lead is also used. Lead is also good neutron absorber, so lead can also be used. Okay, then the next thing is coolant. The energy released inside the reactor in the form of heat is removed by coolant. Obviously there will be energy released inside the reactor and you have to cool down, you have to cool it down. Okay, so for that some coolants are used. For this purpose sometimes ice, cold water or dry ice is used in the reactor. Then there is shield. You know that in a nuclear reaction, various harmful and intense rays are emitted. Okay, these electromagnetic radiations are very harmful. So for this, what they do is this reactor is covered with a thick wall, thick concrete wall, so that the radiations cannot come outside. Okay, for more details, please refer to your NCERT textbook. Now we will start with nuclear fusion. Now, what is nuclear fusion? Nuclear fusion is the process of combining two lightweight unstable nucleus whose atomic mass number is mostly less than 20, okay, and they fuse together to form one heavyweight nucleus or mid-level nucleus at a very high temperature and pressure is called nuclear fusion. Now, for nuclear fusion to occur, the two nucleus must touch each other. So the two nucleus must touch each other, but you know that nucleus is inside the atom, and inside the atom most of the space is empty. So for the two nucleus to touch each other, there have to be a very high velocity so that they can overcome the repulsion. because you know that both the nucleus are positively charged. If they have come so close to each other that they touch each other, that means the atoms has to overlap. Now if the atoms has to overlap, there has to be very, very high kinetic energy. Such high thermal kinetic energy is generated at temperatures of millions of degrees Celsius. So that is why this reaction is possible only at high pressure and high temperature. The vast amount of energy that is released in the process is called the thermonuclear energy, and it is also called a thermonuclear reaction. So nuclear fusion is also called a thermonuclear reaction. Suns and stars get their energy from nuclear fusion. Four hydrogen atom inside the sun, the four hydrogen atom combine to form one He24. Four hydrogen atom combine to form one He24, and 24.7 mega electron volt energy is released in this whole reaction. So 4 1H1 gives He24 plus 2 beta minus, and 24.7 mega electron volt of energy is released in this process. Now energy released in a nuclear fusion is more than the energy released in nuclear fission. But you will say that in nuclear fission, one fission gives you 200 mega electron volt energy. But here you are getting, from one fusion, you are getting only 24.7 mega electron volt energy. Then how is fusion giving you more energy? Fusion is giving us more energy because we compare by using the energy released per unit mass. The energy released per unit mass is how much here? See, 24.7 mega electron volt divided by 4, right? Here the mass of hydrogen atom is 1 AMU, then it will become 4 AMU. Okay, but the energy released in a nuclear fission reaction is 200 mega electron volt divided by the mass of uranium. Now mass of uranium is 235, right? So you will see that per unit mass it is giving you less than 1 mega electron volt of energy, but here you are getting approximately more than 6 mega electron volt of energy. So that is why the fusion process is giving you more energy compared to fission process. Okay, hydrogen bomb is based on the principle of nuclear fusion, but again I'll tell you that nuclear fusion is possible only if the two nucleus touch each other. This two nucleus will touch each other, that means they will overlap inside the atoms only if the temperature and pressure are very high. The temperature has to be in millions of degrees Celsius. It is practically impossible to maintain millions of degrees Celsius at the present time. So that is why we do not have the reactors based on nuclear fusion yet. Yes, some plasma technology we have used to generate these high temperatures, but again it is not sustainable and it is not still economical to generate energy from nuclear fusion. Okay, so hydrogen bomb. Now hydrogen bomb requires such high temperature. How do you generate such high temperature? So to operate an hydrogen bomb, first you have to use an atom bomb. Now atom bomb will first explode and that will generate that high temperature, and then the hydrogen bomb will explode. So hydrogen bomb explosion needs atom bomb explosion, so that 10 raised to power 7 to 10 raised to power 8 Kelvin, that means millions of degrees Celsius temperature could be reached for the fusion process to take place. Then fusion reactor is still not available to get energy from nuclear fusion because it is still not economical, because it is very difficult to attain such high temperature. The easiest thermonuclear reaction that can be handled on Earth is the fusion of two deuterons, or the fusion of a deuteron with a tritium, okay, or triton. So 1H2 plus 1H2, that is 2 deuteron, will combine to form 2 He3, and 1 neutron will be released in the process, and in this process 3.3 mega electron volt of energy is released. You can find out this using the Q value formula. You know that Q value is mass of reactant nucleus minus mass of product nucleus into C squared. Okay, just write the mass of the reactant minus the mass of the product and multiplied by C squared. Okay, we have written here mass of atoms, but this is mass of atom, but we need the mass of nucleus. That is why here what we have done is, if there is one proton, there has to be one electron. So what we have written here is mass of deuterium atom minus the mass of electron is the mass of deuterium nucleus. Similarly here, mass of this He23 atom minus 2 times the mass of electron. Now why 2 times the mass of electron? Because if the proton number is 2, the electron has to be 2. Okay, now 1H2 plus 1H2 again is 1H3 plus 1H1. and in this case 4 mega electron volt of energy is released. So this is two types of reaction where two deuterium nucleus fuse to give, in one case 2He3 and in one case 1H3. Okay, then this 1H2 and 1H3 can again combine to give 2He4, and in this process 17.6 mega electron volt of energy is released. So from here to here, net how much energy is released? From here to here net approximately you can see that 24 or 25 mega electron volt of energy is released. Okay, note, in case of fusion and fission, in both case delta m, that is the mass change, is equal to the delta m atom is equal to the delta m nucleus. So basically what they are saying is change in mass of the atoms is equal to the change in mass of the nucleus, because the electron mass will get cancelled out. Okay, when you do it from reactant minus product, the electron mass will get cancelled out. That is why delta m atom is same as delta m nucleus in both fission and fusion. Now again I am repeating, these reactions take place at ultra high temperatures and at high pressures. Okay, for these reactions to take place, the nuclei should be brought up to 1 femtometer distance. That means they have to touch each other, which requires very high kinetic energy. Such high kinetic energy or such high thermal kinetic energy can be generated only at temperatures of millions of degrees Celsius. Okay, energy released in fusion exceeds the energy liberated in fission of heavy nuclei. I have told you energy released in fusion per unit mass is more than the energy liberated in fission per unit mass. Now let us do one question. In this question it is given to you, calculate the energy released when 3 alpha particles, that means 3 He24, combines to form a C12 nucleus. Okay, you know that energy released is mass of reactant minus mass of product into C square. So they have given you the mass of reactant, they have given you the mass of product. So whenever they will give you carbon, they will not give you the mass of the carbon, because atomic mass unit is defined in terms of mass of carbon only. So mass of C12 is basically 12 AMU, exactly 12 AMU. Okay, so what we will write here, 3 into mass of this minus mass of the carbon 12 into C square. So from this you will get 3 into 4.002603 minus 12 into 931.5. From this you will get approximately 7.27 mega electron volt of energy. Okay, in this question they are saying you consider two deuterons. So you have two deuterons, that is 2 1H2. They are moving towards each other, and they are moving towards each other with equal speed in a deuteron gas. What should be their kinetic energies? So they are asking what should be the kinetic energies, and initially they are widely separated. So initially they are separated at infinity, so that the closest separation, so what should be the initial kinetic energy, so that the closest separation between them becomes 2 femtometer. That means they have to come very close to each other. Assume that the nuclear force is not effective for distances greater than 2 femtometer. Okay, so that means you have to neglect the nuclear force. So at what temperature will the deuterons have this kinetic energy on an average? So as the deuterons will move, it has to move against the electrostatic repulsion, because two nucleus are like charge, that is the positive charge. So when they come towards each other, they will means experience repulsive force, right? The Coulombic repulsive force. So there will be loss in kinetic energy. Okay, this loss in kinetic energy will be gain in the electrostatic potential energy. At the closest separation, the kinetic energy should become 0. Okay, so you will write loss in kinetic energy is equal to the gain in potential energy. So suppose the initial kinetic energy is k, then the total loss in kinetic energy will be 2k, because both are moving with same velocity. So the total loss in kinetic energy is 2k, and the total gain in potential energy will be how much? So in deuteron there is one proton, right? So if there is one proton, that means the charge of the nucleus is E. Okay, so you will write the potential energy is k q1 q2 by r. So k is 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught, q1 is E, q2 is also E divided by r. Now what they are saying is, so that they come close, means the separation between them becomes 2 femtometer. So the r is 2 femtometer, that is 2 into 10 raised to power minus 15 meter. Okay, so when you solve this equation, 2k is equal to, because all these values are known to us, when you solve this you will get k is equal to 5.7 into 10 raised to power minus 14 joule. This is a very high kinetic energy for one deuterium atom. So if you equate it to 3 by 2 kT, so that you can get the thermal energy, or you can say you can get the temperature. You will get temperature is equal to 2.8 into 10 raised to power 9 Kelvin. You know the value of Boltzmann constant, right? The value of Boltzmann constant is 1.38 into 10 raised to power minus 23. So from this you will get the temperature as 2.8 into 10 raised to power 9 Kelvin, which is a very high temperature. Okay. For more details about fission and fusion, please refer to your NCERT textbook. And I have discussed problems of modern physics starting from photoelectric effect, atomic structure, X-rays and nucleus in a new series where there are 4 videos, set 1, set 2, set 3 and set 4, in which there are questions from photoelectric effect, dual nature of radiation and matter, atomic structure, atomic collision, nucleus, nuclear fission and fusion. So please go through that so that you are able to solve problems related to modern physics. I have discussed all the questions that can be asked in the exam in details in those videos. Okay, so please have a look at that. I'll share the link of those videos in the description box. In the next class, we'll be starting with a new chapter, that is geometrical optics. Till then, bye bye, stay tuned. If you like my video, do hit the like button and share my work with your friends, your juniors, your seniors, and any other student who is preparing for JEE, NEET, and any other competitive exam. Also, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I upload my next video.